Blake anxiously rides her bicycle on the streets at night. She is panting as the cool breeze flows through her hair. When her dad saw her mom for the first time, there was no witty yet captivating bio with a flattering candid photo accompanying her. She was just sitting on the bleachers on campus. He knew right there and then that he was going to marry her. This, combined with all the Nora Ephron movies she binged in high school, makes Blake wonder what her love story will be like. Playing foosball in a shabby diner with a college bro from Tinder isn't exactly what she had in mind. Yet, here she is, asking him if he has any siblings. He kisses her without any warning soon after, and she thinks that if Harry met Sally in 2018, all they would have been was friends with benefits. The guy invited her to his place, but she didn't want to have sex with him. She sort of feels bad for these college guys too. They're so busy trying to catch up on what misconduct is that they don't even know how to go on a date. She must say goodbye to grand gestures. The grandest gesture one can expect in this era is someone swiping right on them, instead of left. As the local hopeless romantic, she reports in her column that romance is officially gone. However, when her boss Matt reads her piece, he declares that he's going to vanish her column. Blake gasps in offense and demands to know the reason behind this decision. One of her peers, Jacob, shouts out that it's because her love life is boring. Blake argues that it's not her fault, because she's trying really hard out there. Winnie, who is also in Matt's office, compliments Blake's existential crisis with the philosophical approach. This gives Blake the confidence to convince Matt that her column is good, just niche. This will give a female edge to his newspaper. Matt and Jacob disagree with her column having any sort of edge. So, Matt puts Blake on reviews. She has to review a band playing at a club. Matt points out that the readers have lost interest in her love life, because she has lost interest in her own love life. As Matt assigns Winnie a piece of LSD testing on mice at their college, Jacob hands a note to Blake. It reads, "Don't be sad." Later, Blake rants to her friend Nikki about how she's just another humanities major. She's facing years of rejection from unpaid internships. Nikki offers the solution of joining her on her trip to Thailand, where they'll find themselves. Blake knows that she'll have to take another student loan to go to this party that promises self-discovery, as if any such thing even exists. Nikki advises her to make her column less boring. Blake writes a sex column with no sex happening in her life. Nikki thinks that Blake should have given the philosophy major guy a chance. Blake finds some fault in him, and they buy some liquor. They get asked for their ID at the counter, while a girl named Morgan stands beside them. Nikki teaches Blake that she should give up on her fantasy of an ideal love life, but she's still waiting for her charming prince. They get in a little skirmish with Morgan before they all part ways. Blake and Nikki get drunk and have fun till late at night. They get in line to enter a club where a band is playing tonight. Nikki has heard that the lead guitarist is pretty, but Blake despises him because of his man bun. When the bouncer checks their IDs, Blake realizes that she has someone else's ID instead of her own. Nikki wants to go in to use the bathroom, so Blake doesn't hold her back. Blake has to find her ID now, to get into the club to meet with Nikki and finish her review. Blake arrives at the address on the ID, which actually belongs to Morgan. Blake stands at her building entrance and rings her up. She tells Morgan that their driver's licenses must have gotten mixed up. Morgan doesn't understand her fully, but lets her upstairs to her apartment. Blake hesitantly knocks on Morgan's door, and she answers it with music playing in the background. There is a guy inside Morgan's apartment, dancing to the music. Meanwhile, Morgan examines the ID and realizes that their IDs could have been switched out at the liquor store. Morgan invites Blake into her apartment and introduces her to the guy, Bobby. She apologizes in advance for him not being a good dancer, but Bobby disagrees. Blake awkwardly says hi to Bobby and checks out Morgan's apartment while Bobby pours himself a drink. Morgan gets Blake's ID for her, and Blake is about to leave when Bobby invites her to stay. Morgan also insinuates that the universe brought them all together, so they should embrace it. Blake agrees to have a drink with them, and sips alcohol from Morgan's bottle. Morgan comes up with an excuse to take Blake to the bathroom. After handing her cigarette to Bobby, Morgan sits down to pee on the toilet right in front of Blake, who anxiously washes her hand. Morgan makes a remark about how pretty Blake is, and assumes that she's not aware of the fact. Blake smiles and thanks her for the compliment. Morgan reiterates that it's important for a girl to know her beauty, because that's how you make discoveries. Blake is confused about the statement when Morgan inches closer to her. She whispers that pretty girls must find their powers. Blake still looks clueless, so Morgan spells it out for her. Bobby will pay Blake for her to stay. Blake refuses and explains that she is not a prostitute. Morgan smiles mischievously and plays with Blake's hair. She utters that she's not a prostitute either, and is just trying to cut her into a deal. Morgan promises Blake that it'll be fun, and that she won't have to do anything she doesn't want to do. Blake pretends to think for a while before refusing again, with the excuse that she has an early class the next morning. Morgan understands, and comes out of the bathroom with Blake. Morgan latches onto Bobby and keeps dancing while Blake shows herself out. When she gets home that night, Blake takes a pause and looks at herself in the mirror. She notices that she really is beautiful, and she hasn't been aware of this for some time. When Nikki hears about all this, she says that Blake should have stayed. Blake has no regrets about her decision, because she's not willing to have sex with two strangers for some cash. Their roommate, Conrad, wonders if Morgan is a sugar baby, since those girls are everywhere these days. That's mainly because school is so expensive. But Blake finds it really sad. Blake finds it atrocious that young girls are prostituting themselves to pay for school. Nikki thinks that she's just being dramatic, and considers hookers to be badass. Nikki looks up to hookers for being in charge of their own bodies, until Blake reminds her that they have pimps. Connor adds that sugar babies don't have pimps, and now Nikki knows who to call badass. Later on, Blake runs to Matt excitedly to break the news that something interesting happened to her last night. Matt calls her out for not attending the concert and writing her review on the people waiting in line for it. Matt can sense that she got information from Instagram, and that most of her review was gibberish. Blake hints that Matt is out of touch, and he gets defensive about still being in college at the ripe age of 23. As they get into his office, Matt cheers up a little. This is because Winnie made him coffee while she was waiting for him. Blake points out that they are not his interns. Winnie defends herself by claiming that she is not an intern, but a foam artist. Matt moves on to Jacob next. Matt loved what Jason did with his article, and found his male perspective to be really refreshing. Blake rolls her eyes as Matt agrees to write Jacob a recommendation letter for the Thompson Award. Blake finds it silly that Jacob is applying for that award, because he doesn't write gonzo. According to her, Jacob writes pretentious political satire. Jacob revises that he writes both, since he doesn't only write for the school paper. Blake takes this opportunity to ask if Matt can write her a recommendation letter too. Matt takes a hard pass, because it looks like a conflict of interest to him. Jacob figures out that Blake only wants the award for the money, because she doesn't do gonzo journalism either. Blake and Jacob start debating on the fundamentals of gonzo journalism while Matt and Winnie casually enjoy. Her peers mock her for pretending that she is a part of her stories, when she doesn't do anything newsworthy in life. Blake has had enough. She bursts out that she has a really sexy story, and all the desperate college kids will eat it up. In fact, when Matt reads it, he'll want to give her column back. Blake walks out of the newsroom thinking she really took a stand for herself, even though everyone remains unbothered. Blake goes to Morgan's house next, because she wants to interview her for her piece. Blake makes it known that Morgan can use a fake name for the piece if she wants to. Morgan doesn't understand why she'd want to do that, and is even confused about why Blake's column is anonymous. Blake responds that anonymity gives her more freedom, but Morgan doesn't think so. Both Morgan and Blake are worlds apart in terms of their mindsets and attitudes, and don't understand each other at all. Morgan reports to Blake that she has made $67,000 in gifts. She got a Gucci, Balenciaga, and LV bag. She has gone to Paris twice this year, and Blake is in amazement. Morgan doesn't consider herself a prostitute, but maybe a gold digger. However, she has a much better life than all the other girls stuck in mountains of debt. All they get out of their one-night stands are pregnancy scares, and she gets money with all the fun. Blake inquires if Morgan ever feels taken advantage of, and learns that Morgan sees it as business. Business can be messy, but Morgan is really good at it, because she knows what the men want. All men want their ego stroked, and all Morgan has to figure out is how they work. Then, she can get whatever she wants out of them. And she wants everything. Blake can't mask the envy and respect on her face, even though she wants to. Morgan is clever enough to take notice, and mentions that she's going to meet Bobby at his friend's lake house. Blake can come if she wants, even though it sounds like the beginning of a horror movie to her. Yet, she takes a drag from Morgan's cigarette and joins her. At the lake house, Morgan swims with Bobby while Blake has her feet dipped in the pool. She tries to socialize with the owner of the lake house. He's Bobby's friend, even though he appears to be much older than him. Blake learns that Bobby was in fact the owner, Ian's MBA student once. Blake didn't bring a bathing suit, so she can't go inside the pool. Ian doesn't want to leave her on dry land alone, but still jumps in the water. Blake observes his technique. He didn't dive, so he's not a show-off, because his lake house is enough to boast his status. Usually Blake doesn't get impressed by material wealth, but Ian is hot, and she is stoned. So she jumps inside the pool with her dress on. They talk and have fun for a while. As Blake is about to leave, Ian expresses his desire to see her again, and gives her his card. Blake later finds out from Morgan that Ian has written 5 successful books. She looks him up on the internet, and her fascination grows. Matt also likes the piece she wrote based on her experience so far. Blake wonders if she can have her column back, but it depends on whether she'll date Ian. Blake doesn't plan to see him again, until Matt pushes her to continue this story, instead of shutting it down during the first chapter. She threatens Matt's reputation, but he's already too close to graduating to deal with this stuff, so he lets her have her column anyway. Blake is shopping with Nikki when she proudly announces her little victory. She feels like she has grown from this already, but what Nikki focuses on is how hot the professor sounds. Blake admits that he is kind of charming, even though he's not conventionally hot. They're trying on Halloween costumes when Blake talks about how rich and famous Ian is. Blake and Nikki pull up to the Halloween party that's weirdly happening in April. Blake runs into one of her peers, called Emily. She is dressed up as a loofah. It's become quite evident to Blake now that no one understands her costume. She does, however, receive positive feedback on her column, even though she denies that she wrote it to keep her anonymity. Blake runs into Jacob at the party, who is also wearing the same costume as her. He walks up to her, as they have identified another common interest. They get to know each other better and learn about their favorite writers. Obviously, they are making out a while later in Blake's bedroom. They get undressed and ready to have sex, but Jacob is very courteous to her throughout. They keep talking as he looks for a condom in his pencil case. He comes back to bed and continues to kiss her as he breaks the news that he doesn't have a condom. He pauses and keeps lying on top of her for a while, which makes Blake very anxious. She suggests that she should go, until he reminds her that this is her room. But he accidentally wears Blake's pants while leaving, which doesn't go unnoticed by her. Matt has the best time of his life when he hears about this whole debacle the next morning. As Blake and Jacob stand in his office, he laughs in their faces, even though Jacob doesn't find this funny at all. Blake has written her column about this experience, but Jacob doesn't want it published, even though his name isn't mentioned. But since they were the only two ones wearing the same outfit, it'll be obvious that the piece is about them. Blake learns how sensitive Jacob is, and Matt publishes her piece anyway because they're doing well recently. Blake rants about Jacob's insecure behavior to Nikki when they spot Ian on the street. They wave at him. Blake realizes that she'll have to test the waters of being a sugar baby if she wants to win the Thompson Award. She gets her makeup done by Nikki before meeting with Ian, as she tells herself that she has the power. They meet up at a restaurant, where Blake learns why he doesn't have a girlfriend. He doesn't want to waste his time and efforts on someone who doesn't know what they want. He elaborates that he doesn't want to write checks, but give her gifts. But what she really wants is romance. According to Blake, wealthy older people supporting younger poor women is nothing revolutionary. It's even in Jane Austen's books. Blake finds all sorts of scientific and cultural data to use as evidence to justify her decision to be Ian's sugar baby. During their next meeting at his house, he shows her his record collection. She asks about his piano, and finds out that his bitchy ex used to play it. When she wakes up in his bed the next morning, Blake smiles to herself. She walks through the beautiful house, lit up by the natural sunlight. She gets herself some drinks from the fridge, and meets Ian's dog for the first time. Soon after, she gets dressed and steps out of his house to go home. But she can't find her bicycle on his porch where it's always parked. So she walks home while holding her drinks and helmet. She's about to go into her room when Nikki calls out to her. Somehow, she already knows that Blake had sex last night. Blake sits down with Nikki to tell her that the sex was nice. But Nikki is alarmed when she finds out that Blake practically got no gifts out of that night, and even her bike got stolen. A delivery guy comes up and relieves their stress, as Ian has sent over a moped for Blake. They watch a tutorial Conrad shot on how to drive a moped, and Nikki finds him cute. Even though the tutorial was sort of a bust, Blake gets the moped up and running, and Nikki hops on the back. Blake feels a thrill as she drives her moped through the campus with her best friend sitting in the back. The thrill of the day just keeps going, as Blake even gets a college piercing that doesn't seem to be healing anytime soon. When she goes to the paper that evening, Jacob notices her new piercing. He assumes that it must have hurt a lot, but Blake denies it, even though she's lying. Jacob also catches a glimpse of her printed-out application for the Thompson Award. Blake inquires if he's still mad at him because he fitted in her pants. Jacob clarifies that it's not why he's mad. He follows Blake out on the street to ask if her sugar daddy knows that she's writing about him to win an award. He sees Blake's moped and criticizes how she got it, while also making her feel guilty about not revealing her true intentions with Ian. A few days later, Blake finds herself waking up in Ian's bed with him by her side. She declares that she has finally thought of something that she wants. She adds that she wants a reference letter for an award that she's applying for. He figures out that she's in for the cash, and she admits that it would help pay off her student loan. He points out that he can help with that. Although he doesn't like writing checks, he'll consider this an investment. She jokes that he's the only person who invests in journalism, but he's investing in her. As for the letter, he'll sign it if she writes it herself. It appears from the outside that they are falling in love. He doesn't play games and is chivalrous. Turns out that romance isn't gone. It was just hiding in another dimension where every social interaction is a financial transaction. She feels like a lady in this mutually beneficial relationship. Blake is in the toilet one day when she overhears some girls talking about her mutually beneficial relationship. She walks out in front of them on purpose to make them feel awkward. But it's also true that she doubts her choices, until Nikki assures her that she's not a hooker. But she does feel good, which might be because the cupcakes they're eating right now were laced with Molly by Nikki. When she finds out, Blake immediately tries to throw up, even though she hates puking. She can't handle because she is mentally unstable. While she is in the bathroom, there is a knock at the door, and Nikki answers it. Ian is on the other side, all dressed up, wanting to see Blake. Nikki calls her from the bathroom, and she giddily compliments Ian on how handsome he looks. He asks her to go to a wedding with him. He wants her company right now, because he hates going to weddings alone. To compensate, he got her really fancy and expensive jewelry. Nikki is enjoying this spectacle, because she is stoned and curious about their strange relationship dynamic. She is also a good friend, as she helps Blake with her outfit, While Blake gets ready, Nikki and Ian wait for her in the lounge. When Blake steps out, Ian expresses his awe at her beauty. Ian and Blake drive in a convertible to Bobby's wedding. She confesses that she's high, but they have a really good time at the wedding. But then Bobby finds her alone and wants to sleep with her because he's in an open marriage. She kicks him and runs off. She heads home in an Uber, and her driver voices how low her rating is, even though she seems fine. Some time later, she shows up at Ian's door unannounced to apologize for leaving the wedding. He shuts the door in her face because that's not how this works. She starts to question the nature of her relationship with Ian now. The next time they meet, it becomes very clear to her how transactional and professional their relationship is. She cries in remorse when they get intimate that night. Before the sun is fully up, she steps out of the house wearing sheets. When she tries to go back inside, she realizes that the door's shut behind her. She's locked out, so she finds her bicycle and rides it to go back home. All she's wearing are the sheets she slept in last night. But that's fine, because there is a toga party on campus anyway that everyone went to last night. She stops when she runs into Jacob, who is going back home after the party. She doesn't know how, but she breaks down in front of Jacob. He offers to take her for breakfast, where they talk about who they are bringing to their graduation ceremony. They bond over their trauma of having divorced parents, and he asks about her family. Blake knows how sweet and sincere that is, because it's her question to get her dates to talk about their lives. Meanwhile, here Jacob is, talking trash about his 3-year-old stepsister from his dad's second marriage. When the bill comes up, he doesn't let her pay, like a gentleman. As he walks her home, he knows that she's not even wearing any shoes, but he doesn't say anything to embarrass her. He wishes her goodnight, even though it's a clear day by now. Blake doesn't have her keys, and Nikki isn't at home, so she waits outside her dorm when Ian finds her. He read her column, and feels betrayed that she used him for material. She retaliates that he used her for sex, but Ian reminds her that was part of the deal. Nikki finally opens the door, and Ian threatens to destroy Blake's career before it'll even start if she doesn't erase all traces of her writings about him. Blake sells the bracelet for money because she isn't stupid. Nikki advises against her deleting the column, and encourages her to own her scandal. Blake doesn't see the point, because she was disqualified for the award anyway. She keeps her column, using her name, and is dating Jacob now. She knows now that her story isn't from some 90s rom-com. But hey, at least, it's hers.